It starts like every other Monday. The alarm goes off at the same time it always does. The coffee tastes the same. The drive takes the same 18 minutes it has taken for the last 9 years. Nothing about this morning looks different from the 1,000 mornings before it. And yet, by the time the sun goes down, everything about this man's life will have quietly, permanently changed. Not because of luck, not because of a lottery ticket or a sudden inheritance, because of something he built in silence, one ordinary paycheck at a time for almost a decade. If you stay until the end, you'll understand exactly what happened in that room, what he said, and the number that made grown adults go quiet. But first, you need to understand who he was before that day arrived. Call him Daniel, mid-30s, mid-level position, the kind of employee managers describe as solid instead of exceptional. He wasn't the guy chasing promotions. He wasn't the guy staying late to impress anyone. He showed up, did the work well, and left. To the people around him, Daniel was completely unremarkable. He drove a car that was 8 years old. He packed his own lunch. He wore the same 3 sweaters in rotation through every winter, and nobody ever noticed because nobody was really looking. He answered not much when people asked what he did on weekends, and they believed him because why wouldn't they? But there was one thing none of his coworkers knew about him. One habit so small and so quiet that it never once came up in conversation, not even after 9 years of sitting 20 feet from the same people 5 days a week. Years earlier, back when Daniel was still new to the company, he made a decision that felt almost boring at the time. He decided that a fixed percentage of every paycheck would leave his account before he ever saw it, before he could spend it, before he could talk himself out of it. It wasn't dramatic. There was no spreadsheet revolution, no viral investing strategy, no risky bet that paid off overnight. Just a quiet, automated transfer, the same week after week, feeding into long-term investments he rarely even checked. He never told anyone the number he was working toward. Not his closest coworker, not the friends he grabbed drinks with on Fridays, not even most of his family. To everyone around him, he was simply a guy who didn't spend much. What they couldn't see was that this not spending much was actually a decade-long plan, moving forward in complete silence. The strange part is, this kind of decision doesn't look impressive while it's happening. It looks like missing out. While coworkers leased new cars every few years, Daniel kept driving the same one, and people noticed. There were comments, light jokes mostly, about how he could probably afford better. He let them believe whatever they wanted to believe, because explaining himself would have meant explaining a plan that wasn't finished yet. He skipped the upgrades. He avoided the debt. He turned down the lifestyle creep that came with every raise, redirecting the extra income into the same quiet machine he'd built years before. None of this photographed well. None of it made for an interesting weekend story on a Monday morning. But what he was really building couldn't be seen yet. Not by his coworkers, not even really by him. It was still just numbers on a screen he barely looked at. Then, about a year before that day, something in the office started to shift. First, it was small. A hiring freeze here, a canceled project there. Then came the meetings that ran a little too long, the closed doors, the whispers near the break room about restructuring. Most of Daniel's coworkers reacted the way people usually do when uncertainty creeps into a stable place, with anxiety. Overtime requests increased. People stayed later, tried harder, hoping visible effort would protect them from whatever was coming. Daniel noticed the shift too, but something about his reaction was different. He wasn't calm because he didn't care about his job. He was calm because, for reasons none of his coworkers understood, the outcome of that meeting mattered a lot less to him than it did to everyone else in that room. He didn't know it yet, but the countdown had already started, and it wasn't the countdown anyone else in the building was imagining. The email came on a Tuesday morning, a request for a one-on-one meeting with his director, no agenda listed, just a time and a room number. Anyone who has worked a job long enough knows exactly what that kind of email feels like in your stomach. Daniel walked in, sat down, and listened as his director explained, carefully and a little uncomfortably, that his position was being eliminated as part of a company-wide restructuring. It was the sentence that, for most people in that building, would have triggered panic, mortgage payments, car loans, the sudden math of how many months of expenses sat in a checking account. His director braced for that reaction. Instead, Daniel nodded, asked a few practical questions about timelines and paperwork, and then said something that made the room go quiet. He said he understood, that there were no hard feelings, and that honestly, he'd been thinking about stepping away for a while anyway. The director paused, confused, clearly expecting distress instead of something that sounded almost like relief. What he said next left the room speechless. Daniel wasn't being brave. He wasn't hiding fear behind a calm mask. He was calm because 9 years of quiet, unremarkable, automatic investing had grown into something that no longer depended on that paycheck to survive. What started as a small, almost invisible percentage of his income, redirected before he could spend it, had spent nearly a decade compounding in the background of an ordinary life. Market growth, reinvested returns, and the simple math of consistency had turned thousands of unnoticed dollars into a number large enough to cover his expenses for years. Not because he timed the market perfectly, not because of some secret stock tip, but because he never stopped, never panicked, and never let short-term boredom talk him out of a long-term plan. That's the part almost nobody sees from the outside. It isn't dramatic. It isn't a story you can tell at a party. It's just years of automatic transfers nobody applauded, sitting quietly until the exact moment they were needed most. On an ordinary Tuesday, in an ordinary meeting room, that quiet decision finally revealed what it had been building toward the entire time. Later that week, word spread through the office the way it always does. People who once joked about his old car, his packed lunches, his refusal to upgrade his lifestyle, suddenly had a lot of questions. Some were genuinely curious, others seemed almost bothered, like his calm reaction had quietly challenged something about their own choices. That's the part people rarely talk about. It's not that Daniel did anything they couldn't have done. It's that he did something they chose not to do, consistently, for years, without needing anyone to notice. The sacrifices that once looked like missing out were actually the entire plan working exactly as intended. What looked boring for 9 straight years turned out to be the only thing standing between panic and peace on the one day it actually mattered. Here's the part we're sitting with. Nobody in that office saw the day coming. Not the layoffs, not Daniel's version of that day, and not the years of quiet decisions that made it survivable instead of terrifying. That's usually how it works. The days that change your life rarely announce themselves in advance. What actually decides how those days go isn't luck, and it isn't even talent. It's what you were quietly doing on all the ordinary Mondays nobody was watching. So the real question isn't whether a day like that is coming for you, because eventually, in some form, it usually does. The real question is what your last 9 years of quiet, unnoticed decisions have been building toward, and whether, when that day finally comes, you'll be the one staying calm in the room. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.